In the 2013 action film Homefront, featuring Jason Statham, viewers are thrown into a gripping narrative filled with suspense and unexpected twists. Beware of potential spoilers as we delve into the plot. The story kicks off with a gang of outlaw bikers known as the Outcasts. As the district attorney, DA, closely follows their activities, the gang operates a methamphetamine laboratory, and their leader, Danny T., meets with a man named Phil Broker to discuss drug transportation. As the DA prepares to raid the lab, it is revealed that Phil is an undercover agent. Danny catches on to this and makes a hasty escape with his son, JoJo. A chaotic chase ensues, leading to a dramatic confrontation. Phil pursues Danny, causing a fiery explosion. Danny continues to flee, but Phil's determination remains unwavering. In a tense showdown, Phil outwits Danny by sliding off his bike and disabling the gang leader's vehicle. Phil apprehends Danny, but not before injuring JoJo. Additional agents arrive on the scene, instructing JoJo to surrender, but he makes a fateful choice, leading to an intense and unexpected conclusion. In the aftermath of a tragic incident, an overwhelming sense of sorrow envelops the atmosphere. Danny, burdened by grief, holds Phil responsible for the loss of his son, even though the circumstances are complex. Phil, shattered by the accusations, decides to leave the scene, and it's later revealed that he resigns from the police force 2 years later. The narrative then shifts to a school, where Phil's daughter Maddie engages in solitary play. Her solitude is disrupted by the appearance of Teddy Klum, a bully who physically assaults her. Despite issuing warnings, Maddie ultimately retaliates, causing Teddy's injury. Phil relocates to a small Louisiana town, his late wife's hometown, and works alongside his friend Tito. Soon, Phil is summoned to Maddie's school, where he finds himself entangled in a dispute involving Teddy's parents seeking justice. During the turmoil, Phil encounters a teacher named Susan Hatch and begins to unravel the complexities of his daughter's life. The story also reveals the tragic loss of Maddie's mother, which led to their relocation to Louisiana, driven by Maddie's passion for horse riding. Amidst this backdrop, Cassie Bodine, Teddy's mother, attempts to confront Phil, only to be restrained by the local sheriff. A confrontation unfolds as Teddy's father, Jimmy, seeks vengeance on his son's behalf, but Phil surprises everyone with his response. In a tense and humiliating encounter, Phil finds himself in a brawl with Jimmy. The sheriff intervenes to break up the fight, reassuring Phil that he won't face legal consequences. However, the sheriff is curious about how Phil managed to overpower Jimmy, but Phil sidesteps the question, pledging to avoid further trouble. Phil then moves away to join Maddie, who informs him that the teachers witnessed the altercation. Cassie, with a hostile expression, departs, hurling insults at Jimmy and threatening to involve her brother. Jimmy attempts to convince her to keep the issue within their family. Meanwhile, we are introduced to a group of gangsters indulging in music and drug use. Their activities are interrupted by Gator, a ruthless drug dealer who orders them to cease their activities and send a teenage girl away. Despite their protestations that they only use the drugs themselves, Gator forces them to vacate, warning of dire consequences if they return. Back home, Phil praises Maddie's self-defense skills and shares his pride in her. Playfully, she questions him about his thoughts on Susan, her school teacher. The story then shifts to Gator's activities as he drives away from the scene. Returning home, it becomes clear that Cassie is Gator's sister. She requests Gator to threaten Phil and Maddie while also seeking drugs due to her addiction. The following day, Phil spends quality time with Maddie and then heads to school to seek Susan's help in organizing Maddie's upcoming birthday. Susan suggests he make amends with Teddy's parents to reconcile after the earlier altercation. Phil drives to Jimmy's workplace to apologize, and when Jimmy asks him to extend apologies to Teddy and Cassie as well, he agrees to mend fences. On his way back, he stops at a gas station to refill his car. There, he encounters Gator's men who attempt to provoke him, insisting he pay for the pump before he's finished refilling. Phil ignores their demands, leading to a sudden and intense confrontation where he takes down the gang members one by one in a swift, surprising manner. After the altercation, Phil inquires about who sent them, but the gang leader claims ignorance and departs. Meanwhile, at his meth laboratory, Gator receives troubling news. Maddie notices Phil's injured hand and inquires about it, but he offers a false explanation. While driving, the sheriff signals for Phil to stop, hinting at further developments. Upon their return home, the sheriff requests Phil's presence for a private conversation. The sheriff has received word of an incident at a gas station, but no charges have been filed. Phil remains tight-lipped about his military background, but the sheriff assures him that he has piqued his interest. Meanwhile, Gator arrives at Phil's house while he and Maddie head out for a horse riding session. Unaware of Gator's presence, they depart, and he seizes the opportunity to puncture Phil's car tire. Gator then gains access to the house. At the waterside, Phil and Maddie reminisce about Maddie's late mother. Their emotional connection deepens as Maddie expresses her longing for her mom. Back at Phil's house, Gator takes an interest in Maddie's bunny dolls and stumbles upon some files that reveal Phil's hidden past. As they return home, Gator discreetly keeps the file. Later that night, Maddie approaches Gator, inquiring about her missing cat and bunny doll. Phil assures her they'll search for them. Unbeknownst to them, Gator delves further into the files, uncovering Phil's connection to the Outcasts and his undercover mission, which resulted in JoJo's death. As Phil investigates the slashed car tire, he stumbles upon the disfigured bunny doll, marking a turning point in the unfolding drama. Amidst the club's atmosphere, Marie gets a call from Gator, scheduling a morning meeting. In the morning, Marie, Gator's girlfriend and a former biker familiar with the Outcasts, learns all of Phil's dark secrets, including his involvement in JoJo's death. Simultaneously, Phil confronts Jimmy, warning him to stay away from his home, suspecting him of causing the damage. Gator hatches a plan to deliver Phil to Danny in exchange for meth distribution rights in Danny's territory. Marie, skeptical of the Outcasts, urges caution but agrees to meet Danny's lawyer to seal the deal. Meanwhile, Phil replaces Maddie's damaged doll and prepares for her birthday party. Marie meets with Danny's lawyer, sharing the file containing Phil's past, leading to Danny's decision to take Phil down. Phil and Maddie reconcile with Teddy and Cassie, with Maddie inviting Teddy to her upcoming birthday celebration. While working with Tito, Phil discovers that news of his fight with Jimmy has spread, but Tito suspects Cassie's involvement. Tito informs Phil about Gator, a looming threat. In a cunning disguise as a boat mechanic, Phil attempts to maintain a low profile. Cook Smith, however, reveals that the sheriff is privy to Phil's ruse, yet Gator manages to sway the sheriff to his advantage. Tito discloses the cafe's location where Phil can find Gator, but advises caution. At Maddie's colorful birthday party, most attendees revel in the festivities. Simultaneously, the Outcasts confront Marie, led by Cyrus, seeking Phil's whereabouts after a prolonged search. Marie divulges Gator's demands, but Cyrus remains obstinate, coercing her to reveal Phil's location. After the party, Maddie witnesses her father conversing with Susan, bringing her joy. Later that night, Gator confronts Cassie, warning her to stay away from Phil, but she pleads for drugs. Their heated argument unfolds, witnessed by Teddy. Phil contacts his former DA boss to gather intel on Gator, learning of Marie's recent involvement with Danny. He proceeds to the cafe Tito mentioned, and as he approaches Gator's table, tensions rise with blame over the incidents involving Jimmy and Teddy. Phil demands silence on any information Gator may possess. Confronting Gator, Phil accuses him of the cowardly acts involving his home, the car tire, and Maddie's doll. A stern warning is issued, stating that the next intruder on his property would face dire consequences. Leaving the scene, Phil receives a photo of Marie, suspecting her involvement with Gator. He proceeds to Gator's boat mechanic shop, where his investigative skills uncover the meth production materials and the product itself. Phil sets up an electronic bomb trap that could trigger an explosion when the lights are switched on. During his exit, he encounters Maddie's cat, but is held at gunpoint by one of Gator's henchmen. Despite the initial setback, Phil overpowers the attacker. His pursuit of the cat leads to a brutal ambush, where he is tortured and taunted. The assailants threaten Maddie's safety, pushing Phil to retaliate fiercely, ultimately defeating them and securing his freedom. After a heated brawl and the retrieval of Maddie's cat, the approaching bikers add to Maddie's distress about their impending move. Meanwhile, Cyrus and his gang arrive at Gator's place seeking Phil's whereabouts, with Gator reluctantly directing them. He opts to stay behind to avoid drawing attention. The gang proceeds to the waters en route to Phil's home, where Tito has arrived to assist. As they near Phil's property, strange sounds alert Tito, and a confrontation ensues with one of the gang members. Though initially overpowered, Tito manages to subdue his opponent with a garden fork. Phil begins to pack, but the gangsters close in. Tito's desperate warning shots reach Phil as they surround the house. He guides Maddie to hide, prepares himself, and awaits their arrival as the gangsters intensify their search. Phil opens the door and fires at an intruder, igniting a fight inside the house. Maddie flees to the woods for safety. Marie calls Gator to report the chaotic situation. As Phil continues to battle the gangsters, one pursues Maddie through the forest, but Phil intervenes and saves her. Cyrus confronts Phil, prompting Maddie to escape to the shores, where she encounters Marie. A fierce duel unfolds between Cyrus and Phil, and Marie persuades Maddie to leave with her. Phil triumphs over Cyrus but helplessly watches as Marie kidnaps Maddie. The police arrive, and Phil informs the sheriff. They receive a call from Maddie, who describes her location. With Phil's recognition, they track her phone and head to Gator's place. Gator arrives at the scene, furious at Marie for bringing a witness to his hideout, and the situation escalates. Cassie and Jimmy confront Gator at his place, questioning him about the reported shootings and Maddie's disappearance. Gator denies involvement or knowledge of Maddie. Meanwhile, Marie takes Maddie outside, and Cassie overhears them. She investigates and triggers Phil's trap, causing an explosion that destroys Gator's drug lab. In the chaos, Gator wrestles Maddie away from Cassie, shooting her in the stomach. Phil arrives, giving chase on the highway as they speed away. Police block potential escape routes, leading to a dramatic confrontation on a bridge. Maddie's presence prevents the police from firing as Gator attempts to shoot Phil. Maddie distracts Gator, enabling Phil to subdue him. He pummels Gator, ultimately holding him at gunpoint. As Phil and Maddie escape the scene, Phil's heart softens, leading him to reveal to Gator that Maddie saved him. Gator, in a surprising turn, spares him, and they both head to embrace Maddie. Paramedics tend to Cassie's injuries. Subsequently, Phil pays a visit to Danny in prison, delivering a warning. This concludes our recap.